Okay, here we are. Yesterday, if you saw my stream, I had started to make a sock for my indigo vat. It looks like this. And I'm going to stitch another couple of rows because I want to make it a bit longer. It did help. I thought, because I've been trying to do indigo and I use a beer mat, and this time of year it gets the vat gets too cold and it doesn't ferment properly. So by putting this vat on, it's supposed to be around between 30 and 35 degrees, and it's usually only in the 20s, and it doesn't work. Right now it doesn't work because it's 23, but that's because I moved this stuff around, moved it up here, so it's lost a lot of heat, but it will start to pick up again. Um, but it had a nice bunch of bubbles in it this morning, and I thought, well, maybe it's ready to go, but really, it does take several days, so I'm just going to check it. There was a bunch of sediment on here. Move this stuff out of the way. See, it's not really producing any kind of real blue color. It's just a gray black. And these little bits shouldn't be here, and that's because I use a fermentation vat, and I have to put something in to feed it, and I use wheat bran. So these little flecks are not the indigo dye. They're actually wheat bran that's been sort of colored, and so it actually has to get all used up and eaten up by the fermentation process. So I'm going to feed it a little bit. I'm going to take this off, and I'm going to take this over to my chair, and I'll null-bind that in a bit. And I'm just going to feed the vat. It has lots of bran in it, but it needs more sugar. So I'm going to add a bit of sugar into it. And a little bit of yeast. A few sprinkles of yeast. And then it also needs something that's fermented already. I usually use, people do fruit and all kinds of stuff, but what I use the leftovers from the dye baths, like madder, anything that's a root. You can use the leftovers, that it starts to go moldy after a couple of days. So what I do is I throw it into the vat, and then that mold from the remains of the madder root or other root um, helps the fermentation and the rotting process to occur. It does smell a bit. I have some Himalayan rhubarb that I dyed the other day, and as you can see, it's all moldy in there. So I'm going to add a bit of water to this. And give this a bit of a stir. And then I'll pour all this moldy stuff into the vat. And then I'll check it every couple of days, well, every day, to see how it's doing. So that should start to ferment if all goes well. So give this another stir. And put the lid back on it. And now I'm going to go over and finish binding the little sock to help it keep warm. Yay, my little switcheroo of the camera actually worked this time. Cool. Okay. Okay. All right. I was working on this, and I was doing a green roll, So I'm going to do another couple of rows of green. So I keep saying this every time, but people don't know what a Russian join is, so I'll just repeat myself. If you've heard it before, ignore it. Okay, so instead of tying knots, you can do this cool thing called a Russian join, I suppose because Russian people invented it. And you just run the needle through the yarn a couple of times and form a loop there. And then put the new yarn through that loop. And then pull this through. And the same on the other side. There, now I made a join with no knots in it, and it's not going to come apart. And I trim the edges off. Now I'm doing what's called, I think it's called a mum and stitch. I call it 2 plus 2 because I pick up 2 threads and I pick up 2 new threads, two old threads. So first I start from the bottom and I pick up a new stitch and an old stitch. It's much like crochet. You pick up the stitch from the previous row, except we're going left to right instead of right to left. And then there's 2 stitches on my thumb, so I'm going to pick up 2 more from behind my thumb. Turn the needle counterclockwise back on itself and slip it through those stitches that are on your thumb. So now there's 3 stitches on my thumb. So I'm going to pick up a new one and an old one to start the row. And then I pick up one of these, so there's still 2 remaining on my thumb, and then 1 more from behind. Okay, I think the sock is done. I'm going to finish off here, and I'm going to take this over to my indigo vat and put it on. Oh, I just got another viewer. Oh, hello, new viewer. Sorry, I'm just finishing up for today. I have been doing Nalbinding a sleeve for my indigo vat. Because it is too cold and it helps to keep it warm. So I'm putting this on here, and I looked at this earlier today and it's not ready for dyeing anything. Yeah, see, it's still gray. So what I've done is I've fed it. I gave it some wheat bran and some sugar and some fermented Himalayan rhubarb and a bit of yeast. And I'm going to let this sit overnight and brew. It's kind of like like you're making beer. And the indigo, the little cover that I made for it last night, helped to keep it warm, because right now it's only about 24 degrees, but once it starts to heat up, it goes to about 30 and between 30 and 35, and then that's the better temperature for making indigo. But I'll be back tomorrow, and so I hope you'll stop back in. I'm going to start a new vat as well, because I have another beaker here. Oops, I have another beaker, so I'm going to start another vat right from scratch, like from the new indigo, because this is an old one that I rejuvenated, but I'm going to start another one tomorrow. So hope you'll stop back in.